Intro to Government Benefits and Special Needs Trusts. The number one question we get is always, is this being recorded? Can I get a recording? Yes, you can. This is kind of dense material, and I think it's always good to have a recording. We'll also send out the slides that you'll see today, just so you can go back. We have your email address if you signed up on Humanitix. So yeah, easy peasy. It'll probably go out tomorrow. And Michelle's gonna, lead us through the content. And if you have any questions, if you want to just put them in chat, we love a dialogue. We like to hear, what you're wondering. But yeah, put them in chat, and then when she gets to a pause, we'll get to any questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We got a few more people coming in. All righty. Well, welcome everyone. I know we have some parents here. I know we have some professionals. We have any self-advocates? Anybody here? Uh, Raise your hand, or you could use the or do we have any siblings? I know we have at least one or two siblings, right? Good. So we got a nice mix. So most of what we're going to be talking about is aimed at beneficiaries who are adults over the age of 18. If you have specific questions about minors, please put them in chat. But most of our work does end up concerning people with disabilities, a wide range of disabilities, physical, mental, intellectual, developmental, above the age of 18. So we have some clients who are regional center clients. We have some clients who have serious mental illness. We have some clients who have mostly physical disabilities. And we also have some clients over the age of 65 who have chronic health conditions. So it's a pretty big range of clients that we serve. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the PowerPoint going. So here we go. In today's presentation, we're going to do an overview. And please keep in mind, this is just the iceberg on top of the water. We're not going to be able to cover in depth any one of the benefits because each of them are very complicated history and rules and regulations, but just giving you an overview. And then that will lead us into why you might need a special needs trust for a person with a disability. And then I'll talk about pooled special needs trust, which are a variety of special needs trust, and then drill down a little bit more into JLA Trust and what we offer. We are a community-based nonprofit, and we are also fee for service. So that means, although we operate as a social service agency, we do charge for our services, but our services are all below market. So all of our services are far below what you would pay from a bank or commercial trust company or a private professional licensed fiduciary. And then at the very end, we'll touch upon CalAble savings accounts, which are also a really important financial vehicle for people with special needs, and then how Special Needs Trust and CalAble work together. Okay, so what is the main problem we're trying to solve here? So what we're really after is, how can a person who has any of the disabilities I just talked about, whether it's physical, mental, intellectual, developmental, or a combination, how can they keep their eligibility for as many government benefits as possible and also receive money from an inheritance or a legal settlement? I should add, sometimes people are getting money from a structured settlement, so the money doesn't come in all at once, it kind of dribbles in. Or sometimes people are getting inherited IRAs. from their deceased relatives, and then the money would be coming in annually as a RMD, as a required minimum distribution. So that's the main issue here. So when we think about government benefits, it's important to remember that many government benefits have both asset, and that's what they often refer to as resources, and also income. And that would be monthly money that comes in. And there could be money that comes in for most of our clients. The money coming in is going to come from SSI or SSDI. Sometimes it's going to be earned money from a job. Sometimes it's going to be, for our older clients, it's going to be Social Security retirement. So a variety of sources that can comprise that monthly income. So the government programs are looking at assets, income, and the disability criteria. So quite often the client has to check all three of those boxes. So just being severely disabled is not going to be sufficient in most cases to get you the government benefits. And then the other thing to keep in mind with the government benefits, they're very important and helpful to having a safe and full life, but at the same time, they're only designed to get you barely to the federal poverty level. So that's why families, so often when they're planning ahead for their loved one with a disability, they're going to want to plan ahead some kind of inheritance. All right. On the left-hand side of this chart are need-based benefits. So that means the government is going to be looking, how much money are you bringing in every month? Like I said, it could be earned income from some kind of work or self-employment, or it could be another government benefit like SSI, SSDI, or Social Security retirement. Also things like alimony. And then the other need-based benefit that's super important, in California, it's called Medi-Cal, and that's health insurance for the poor and disabled. California's Medi-Cal is part of the National Medicaid program. And we're going to be hearing a whole lot about potential cuts to Medicaid with the new administration taking over in January. So in California, our Medi-Cal program is funded with both federal dollars and state dollars. That is less true in some other states. Now, on the right-hand side, these are benefits that you get from being a U.S. citizen and contributing through your work, and that would, or through your partner's work, and that would be SSDI. That's Social Security Disability Insurance. When people have been working for a while and they become ill or injured, and they go on disability, that's what they're getting. They're getting SSDI. And then there's Medicare, which is our country's national health insurance program for people over the age of 65. Many younger people with disabilities can also qualify for Medicare, mostly on their parents' work record. So we have a separate slide that talks about that. But many of our clients, by the time they get to be in their mid-30s, early 40s, they are actually eligible for all four of these benefits. And that's a good thing. I always say if there's a benefit you're eligible for, you should apply for it, no matter if it's a pain to do the eligibility, and you should maintain that eligibility. Because once you lose a benefit, it can be very hard and take a lot of time to get it back. And if you have questions, please type them in chat, and I'll be taking a pause in just a few minutes and we can answer some of those questions. So this is a special benefit that most people don't know about. This is what I was referring to, where adults with disabilities can get benefits based on their parents' work record. So it's called, it's a little, oops, let me go back. Disabled adult child, or childhood disabled beneficiary. So let's just walk through this slowly because it's a little complicated. So basically, the government is saying if you, mom or dad, worked and you earned enough money in all your quarters to get Social Security retirement, at the time of your retirement, let's say it's at age 70, and you go to get your own Social Security, you can click a little box that says, do you have an adult disabled child? If the child was diagnosed before the age of 22 and is currently over the age of 18, so somebody was diagnosed basically as a child and is now a legal adult, that legal adult has a right to 50% of whatever the parent is getting in Social Security. And then after the parent dies, that disabled adult child can get 75% of what the parent's Social Security was. You can only collect on one parent. So, whichever parent earned the most money while they were working, they're going to have the higher Social Security retirement amount. Now we're going to dig down into some of those benefits we saw on that initial graph. So, what is SSI, Supplemental Security Income? This is a federal program run out of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid in Washington, D.C. Currently, the most you can get is $1,182 for most people in the state of California. And you can see the breakdown between federal and California dollars. Most states do not add to the federal amount, but California does. Now, the most you can earn, and this is from employment or being self-employed, in order to get SSI, it's pretty low. It's $1,550. There are some ways to earn more and keep your SSI, mostly with the CalAble accounts that we'll talk about at the very end. SSI basically gives eligible recipients, a monthly cash grant. It comes with, usually comes direct deposit from the U.S. Treasury into somebody's checking or savings account. Now, the real kicker with SSI is you're only allowed to have $2,000 at any one time in your own name and Social Security number. And that would be checking accounts, bank accounts, stocks, bonds, gift certificates, gold, Bitcoin. You're only allowed to have $2,000 in your own name and Social Security number. So, unfortunately, this program that started in the mid 70s, it ends up keeping a lot of people with disabilities in a state of poverty because they're not able to save up money. And so, one way you can save money and keep your SSIs with CalAble. The other way to set aside money and keep your SSI is going to be with a special needs trust. And the other big benefit of SSI, it links automatically to Medi-Cal. And you only have to be getting $1 of SSI in order to get Medi-Cal. Now, there's many different types of Medi-Cal. There's like 20 different types, but this is the best type. It's called categorically linked because it's linked through the federal program. SSI, remember I said that's a federal program administered out of Washington, D.C., and it has the automatic linkage to Medicaid, Medi-Cal in California, and there's no co-pays with that particular type of Medi-Cal. All right. Now, how do you qualify for SSI? Well, you have to be disabled. You have to have less than $2,000 in the bank. You have to be earning less than $1,550 monthly. But you are allowed to have all of these resources. One house that you live in, it cannot just be a rental property. The beneficiary can live in the house and there can be tenants in that same house or apartment building, but it can't be exclusively a rental property. You can have one car whose title is in the beneficiary's name, even if the beneficiary doesn't drive. Somebody else, like a parent, a conservator, a trustee, they could drive the person around. but the car can be titled in the name of the person with a disability. You can have a small life insurance policy, you can have a burial plot, burial fund, and you can have household goods and personal effects. And the Social Security Administration has its own unique definitions of income. So it's important to have some understanding of what that is. Unearned income is money that you get from not doing any work, passive income. So that could be from a wide range of sources: annuities, pensions, alimony, child support, dividends, interest, rent, um, settlements, or payments from other programs. Now, if somebody who is getting SSI gets any unearned income in their own name and their own social security number, that's going to reduce that monthly cash grant dollar for dollar after the first $20. So we want to avoid that if we can. And there's ways around it. There's, if you're working, well, I'll talk about working is next in the earned income. Mostly the way around this unearned income would be with your special needs, a third party special needs trust. And then earned income, that's from wages, salary, or any kind of compensation for any kind of work. So gig work, 1099 work, W-2 work, any kind of work in which money is received. After the first $65, SSI benefits are reduced $1 for every $2. And there is a way around it with something called Ticket to Work program that lets you work without having your SSI cut off. And also another way around this earned income issue is with a CalAble account. So SSI has this crazy outdated rule called in-kind services and maintenance, ISM. So basically the federal government is saying if you're getting assistance in certain areas, you don't need extra assistance from the federal government. Now, it used to be that food and shelter in all forms was going to be penalized if someone else paid for it. That just changed as of October 1st. So now the only things we have to be careful of is mortgage, property taxes, rent in some cases if it's low, heating, fuel, gas, electricity, water, sewer, and garbage removal. So if anyone else, including parents, neighbors, your special needs trust pays for any of these things, the federal government will reduce that monthly check by 1/3 plus $20. So that's right now that's $314. So like I said, there were these big changes that took place October 1st of this year. So food, thank God, is no longer counted as part of this in-kind payment. So that means that nonprofits can buy people with disability meals or give them food without it counting against them when it comes to their monthly SSI check. You can use your special needs trust to pay for food, either groceries or a restaurant, without any penalty. And then the rent subsidy definition changed. It's a little complicated. Basically, as long as you're paying more than $334 of rent every month, you will not have a penalty in your monthly SSI check. So what that means is adults over the age of 18 who are living at home with their parents need to be paying rent to their parents. So what that means every month is there's going to be a check or a electronic money transfer from the adult child's SSI checking account into the parent's checking account. And there should actually be a signed contract or a lease, a simple lease agreement. But adults over the age of 18, no matter how severe their disability, if they're getting SSI, they should be paying rent according to the federal government. So then we're going to move on to Medi-Cal. Remember, that's Medicaid in California. And as the name implies, it pays for a lot of different kinds of medical care. It pays for all kinds of doctors and hospitalizations. It can pay for in-home caregiving through the in-home supportive service program known as IHSS, which we'll get to in just a minute. It can pay for actual equipment, everything from a wheelchair to an insulin pump to grab bars in the home and ramps. Also, very important, pays for prescription meds and also end of life. You can have both Medi-Cal and Medicare. So people over 65, of course, usually have both Medi-Cal and Medicare if they're disabled. But as I said earlier, you can be under the age of 65 and get Medicare off of your parents' earnings record. You can also have private health insurance from an employer and also Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is always going to be secondary or tertiary because the Medi-Cal provider rate is lower than private providers and lower than Medi-Cal. I'm sorry, lower than Medicare. But all these words sound the same. Okay. Moving over to what is IHSS, in-home supportive services. So that is a California state benefit. This is not a federal benefit. You have to be in the state of California. You have to already be getting Medi-Cal. Then you can apply for IHSS. And the way you apply is through your local county Department of Social Service. And they're going to send somebody to the home and evaluate the person. And mostly they're going to be looking at what they call activities of daily living. So these are very basic things we all need to do every day. Like, can they get out of bed by themselves? Can they go to the bathroom by themselves? Can they brush their own teeth? Can they get dressed? Can they make their own breakfast? Can they take their own meds? So based on what's needed, each beneficiary is given so many hours per month based on those needs. It maxes out at 283 hours, which is 8 or 9 hours a day, depending on how many days there are in that particular month. And family members can be paid caregivers, or you can hire somebody who is not a family member to come into the home and provide this care. So the benefits can change over the life of a child. So this chart is particularly relevant for children who are regional center clients. Regional center clients are people who were diagnosed with either autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, severe epilepsy that interferes with their life, or a similar condition like a near drowning accident before the age of 22. And then that person is able to get, in the state of California, regional center services from birth all the way through death. And then, as I said, once the child becomes 18, quite often they might be able to get SSI based on their own income, and they can get SSDI based on the parent's work record. And after 2 years of being on SSDI, they will be entitled to be on Medicare. So the benefits can definitely change throughout the lifetime of a beneficiary. And SSI, people getting SSI and people getting in-home supportive services can also get food stamps. In California, we call it CalFresh. I think most of you know it's no longer stamps. It's actually, it's like a debit card, and the card gets loaded every month based on different factors. It's really important to know that in 2024, the state of California eliminated completely the asset limit to qualify for Medi-Cal, which is different than other states, but those monthly income limits still apply. So if you have $1 million in the bank and let's say every month you're getting $4,000 a month pulled from that $1 million, you would be over income with Medi-Cal, and you would probably not qualify. Okay, I'm going to stop right here before I talk about how to keep all those benefits. And let's see if we've got some questions.
Yeah, we have quite a few. So is SNAP considered unearned income?
Not usually. It's usually excluded. Yeah.
So I pay part of my son's rent and for his mental health services. Is the amount I pay considered unearned income and subject to the SSI reductions?
Uh, it depends if you're paying out of pocket or through a health insurance policy. So I don't think it would be considered unearned income. The problem is he might get that rent. He might get that ISM reduction on the rent is my bigger concern with that question.
Does the beneficiary owe taxes on the capital gains from their pooled special needs trust sub-account balance every year or only on distributions?
So capital gains would be from investment income. And yes, a pool trust beneficiary would have to pay capital gains, but only if they were above the standard deduction. Most of our clients are way below the standard deduction. So the vast majority of our clients do not pay any capital gains. But theoretically, if you had enough money in a special needs trust, and it had enough capital gains and that was over the standard deduction, then yes, there would be capital gains, taxes that needed to be paid, and those could be paid out of the special needs trust.
How do you handle rent for a rental that wouldn't normally be available for rent? In this case, the room the adult lives in doesn't have access to a kitchen or full bathroom.
So the Social Security Administration has different amounts of SSI that they provide, and you can get more money monthly if there is no access to a kitchen.
Can Medi-Cal pay for remote therapeutic monitoring equipment such as a MedMinder medication dispensing machine?
You got me stumped. I do not know about that specific apparatus. Generally, it has to be a generally accepted, widely used therapeutic item, like like I said, like a wheelchair or glucose monitor. I don't know if it would be considered medically necessary, but it's a good question. One of the things, if it's not currently covered, you could ask the physician to submit something called a TAR. I don't know what that stands for, but basically it's a waiver. It's like a one-time waiver that the doctor or whoever is like prescribing that would need to submit that to Medi-Cal.
What happens if my son inherits money from my trust? He is on Medi-Medi, I think SSDI.
Okay, so when you say my trust, Lisa, I think you're probably referring to a family living trust.
Yes, it's my living trust, and he's a beneficiary along with my other two children.
So, I mean, the issue is, does he get over income, on the Medi-Cal?
He gets 1,100 a month
From SSDI.
SSDI, and no cash from Medi-Cal, just food stamps or CalFresh. That's it. That's his
No,
income.
but the problem is once he starts getting money from your trust, see, that could take it. If it's just a regular trust, or, I mean, and is it a lump sum?
Like I'm just saying in my passing.
Right. So typically that would be a lump sum.
Right.
So having a lump sum sitting in the bank is okay. The problem becomes when he starts trying to spend down that lump sum.
Mhm.
So if you, in your trust document, if you, instead of just having him inherit directly from your living trust, if you set up a special needs trust, either with us or just on your own, if you set up a third party special needs trust, he could have as much distributions from that lump sum as he needed without, without endangering that Medi-Cal.
Okay, thank you.
So, sorry,
Yeah,
it's all of these are kind of complicated.
yes, thank you.
All right, so
How can someone keep their full-time job and also get SSI? He needs to work full-time in order to have insurance for his medication to be covered.
so that's a tricky one. So I guess the question would be, is he eligible for Medi-Cal? And maybe Medi-Cal could cover that medication. What you could do is, since I don't know the answer to that question, is if he needed to work full time, as long as it's under 37,000, that's going to go up in 2025, he could kind of shelter the extra earned income in a CalAble account. And that would be a way to keep his SSI. But rather than having him work full time, if that's not something he really wants to do, I would see if that medication couldn't be covered by Medi-Cal. All right. What's next? We'll take one or two more questions, then we'll jump back in.
Here's my adult son was never diagnosed with autism, but we are now retesting him. He is over age 22. Does that mean he can no longer receive benefits from the regional center? In the past, he did receive some services from the regional center, but they can't find any record of it.
So this gets really tricky, Barbara. So a lot of kids under the age of 3 qualified for a program, I think it's called Early Start, but that is federally funded only. And then if they didn't, at that point, when they're 3, they're kind of reevaluated. And if they're doing really well, then they're kind of removed from the regional center system. But if they seem to still be having developmental delays, then they stay in the regional center system. So it's going to be, especially now with tightening budgets, I think it's going to be hard to go back to the regional center and receive benefits. You're going to have to really dig up records from when he received services from the regional center. So I'm sorry, but the burden is unfortunately on the family to find those records.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, I keep very good records, and for whatever reason, I cannot find. I know the name of the therapist he was seeing there, but of course she's not there anymore.
Right.
And they tell me they've changed their systems and they can't find him. And he was there when he was 17, and that was 14 years ago.
Yeah, I would dig in your own records and see what you can find.
I've done it. I can't find it. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know. You can I think there's some new public records law that's going into effect in January with the regional center. So maybe you could petition for the records under the Public Records Act. It's the only thing I can think of.
What happened?
So is it a waste of time for me to have him retested then?
The problem is if he gets tested now, remember I said for regional center benefits, you have to be diagnosed by a medical doctor before the age of 22. So the fact that he's getting tested now is not going to unfortunately help.
Will it help with any government program?
Not really.
Okay.
It might help with some employment programs with the Department of Rehab. I mean, I think it's still worth to get the diagnosis. It also might help, with the SSDI, that adult disabled child benefit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's just like if someone has a near drowning accident at the age of 21, they could become a regional center client. If they have that same near drowning accident at 25, they can never become a regional center client.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty arbitrary.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to be realistic, you know. But anyway, I think it's worth doing like I said, there's these new public records that's going to start in January. So it might be worth, seeing if that can pan out anything. And so anyone who wants to meet with me privately, we have to set up via email. We can set up a phone call or an email.
Michelle's email address is listed at the end of the presentation. It's in the slides. You can take a screenshot. But also when I send out my sum up email that'll go out tomorrow, I always put Michelle's contact information for anybody who wants to set up a personal meeting with her.
And let me jump back in to our PowerPoint. And keep putting your questions in chat. So we went through all these important benefits: SSI, SSDI, Medi-Cal, IHSS, food stamps. How do you keep all these benefits? So one of the primary ways to keep those benefits is to create something called a special needs trust. And they are specifically designed for people with a disability to enhance their quality of life while also allowing them to keep all of their government benefits. Now, of course, there's some catches and some provisos. Money in a special needs trust has to be used for the benefit of the beneficiary. So that means, let's say parents put in $100,000 into a third-party special needs trust, and God forbid, Aunt Thelma gets diagnosed with cancer and needs specialized treatment. You cannot pull out money from that $100,000 from your son or daughter's special needs trust for Aunt Thelma. As important as that is, unfortunately, you just cannot do that. It has to be for the benefit of the beneficiary. It also has to be irrevocable, which is different than most people. Most people set up a family trust. They're also known as living trusts. And the reason why it has to be irrevocable is because if it was revocable, then the beneficiary would be able to break or end the trust and just keep the cash in their own checking or savings account. And then they'd be over that, for example, that $2,000 limit with SSI. So has to be for the primary benefit of the beneficiary, and it has to be irrevocable. But in return, you get to keep your government benefits. You get to have access to your assets through a trustee, and you can have investment income. In fact, trustees, professionally licensed fiduciaries, trustees in the state of California are actually required to invest the money in a prudent manner, with the idea of growing the money for many years or for over the lifetime of the beneficiary, depending on how big the assets are. Every now and again, I get stuck here. Okay, so there's two major types of special needs trust. First party. So we have, I'll give you an example of one of our clients, Denise. She's 50 years old. She's had serious mental health, not able to work. She's been on SSI and Medi-Cal. She gets in a car accident and gets $50,000 from the car insurance company. If she just keeps that $50,000, she's going to lose her SSI, and it's going to make her life very difficult. So she puts that money into a first party special needs trust, also known as a self-settled trust. Now, the problem with the first party is after Denise dies, the Medi-Cal Recovery Office in Sacramento is going to come calling, and they're going to say, hello, Mr. or Ms. Trustee. We were happy to help Denise out with all kinds of Medi-Cal services when she was alive. Now that she's gone, we would, if there's any money left in her trust, we have a right to have you pay off the Medi-Cal claims. And for our clients who've been receiving Medi-Cal for a long time, those claims are very large. They can be hundreds of thousands, even close to $1 million, depending on what kind of services they got through Medi-Cal. Psychiatric help, in-home supportive services, some of the regional center services are actually paid through a Medicaid waiver. So with first party trust, there's typically not going to be money to pass on to other family heirs. So you want to avoid first party trust if you can. So the best way for families to avoid a first party trust situation with an inheritance is for parents to plan ahead. Or it could be aunts and uncles, adult siblings. And you would plan ahead with a third party special needs trust. And there's no Medi-Cal payback after death. So after the person passes away, money can go on to named heirs. Typically family members, but it could also be favorite charities. So very wealthy people, high net asset folks, they're going to generally be advised by their trust and estate attorney to use a professional trustee or a corporate trustee. And the reason why they advise that, instead of having a sibling or a cousin or a family friend be appointed the trustee, is because it's complicated to administer a special needs trust. As we can see, there's tax issues, there's government benefit issues, and then most of all, there's the interpersonal issue, of having somebody text you 10 times a day, there's a brand new PlayStation, I want the new PlayStation, why won't you let me buy a PlayStation with my special needs trust dollars? So middle class families have had a tough time, though, because most professional trustees, and that includes banks, corporate trustees, professionally licensed fiduciaries, which I am and which our trustee Ron Parks is as well. Most professional licensed fiduciaries, they're going to want to see at least $1 million, and that's in liquid assets, not stocks, not bonds. They want to know that there's going to be $1 million coming into that third party trust. Most middle class families don't happen to have $1 million hanging around. So middle class families and even upper middle class families can find themselves in a bit of a bind. Who is going to be the trustee of the special needs trust after the parents pass away? So the solution is something called a pooled special needs trust. And this is a slide just to encourage everyone to act now and not to wait. So I just want to put in a reminder note for those of you who have your children in the regional center system. By law, regional centers cannot pay for rent. So if you want your adult child to live somewhere where there's going to be rent, either they're going to have to work enough hours to pay for the rent, which is tough in Southern California, or some other family member is going to have to pay for the rent, or you're going to need a special needs trust to pay for the rent. In group homes, the regional centers use SSI or SSDI for that. All right. So what exactly is a pool trust? These are entities that were created by Congress back in 1993. And Congress said they had to be operated by nonprofits, and that each nonprofit should create a master trust, which is like an umbrella governing document for could be for 10 people, 100 people, could be 10,000 people, all under the same master trust governing document. Clients come into that master trust by signing a joinder agreement, which is a legal contract. And so if it's a third party trust being set up by money from parents, grandparents, aunts, or uncles, then those are called the settlers. those would be the people signing the joinder agreement. Sometimes it's a conservator, for different legal reasons, ends up signing that. Or sometimes it could even be a guardian ad litem appointed by a court if there's a disputed probate case. So the way it works with a pool trust is money is pooled together for investment purposes, similar to a mutual fund. Everybody's money is in our case, in a Charles Schwab custodial investment account. Each client has their own sub account, and each client has so many units of that investment portfolio, similar to having shares of stock. And then at the end of each market day, the stocks and bonds that are in that portfolio are going to go up or down a little bit much. Hopefully, over time, the trend is upward. And they're at the end of every market day, the amount in their trust is adjusted based on what happened in the markets. Okay. So why would a pooled special needs trust be a good option for your family or for your clients? Well, because we have that pre-written master trust, that's going to save a lot of money on the establishment of that special needs trust. If you just walk in to any trust and estate attorney, they're going to charge you anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 to set up a special needs trust. And quite often they're just going to do, depending if it's their specialty or not, they may just, do kind of a fill in the blank situation. With the pooled special needs trust, you're going to be able to have that professional trustee services and professional wealth management services. So we work with a company called TrueLink Financial, and they're the ones managing our money. Right now, we have about $12.5 million in total pooled assets under advisement. And they've done very well in meeting their benchmarks. And it's really a pleasure to have a professional managing that money over time. And really important, having a special needs trust run by a nonprofit such as ours, it's going to minimize conflict of interest with the family members or with spouses. So, if there's a special needs trust, let's say for John, John's sister is Mary, Mary is married to Tony, and Tony says, Mary, your brother's fine. I know your parents put the money in special needs trust for your brother, but you know what? We really need the money for my business, and that'll help all of us. So you can imagine Mary really feeling squeezed there between the needs of her brother and the wants of her husband. So when you have that professional trustee, it removes that kind of interpersonal dynamic and conflict. So what do we offer? And our services are available for anyone who currently lives in the state of California. If they move out of state, that's okay. We can keep providing services. But Medicaid rules, as I mentioned, vary from state to state. So we have first-party trusts. As I said, that's if somebody kind of ends up in a legal settlement and they're a plaintiff and they end up getting a legal settlement from a car accident. We've had sad situations happen sometimes in public schools, in nursing homes, medical malpractice. All of those cases would be first party trust. Sometimes parents, unfortunately, don't plan ahead and money is evenly divided among, let's say, 4 kids. But the youngest child has schizophrenia and is on SSI. And it's really important that they keep getting their SSI and their Medi-Cal connected to that SSI. And so in that case, a first party trust would need to be created for that 4th child because the parents just split the money evenly among their 4 children. So the third party trust is those planning ahead trust from parents, grandparents, other family members. And we are offering for parents to plan ahead something we call the future funded option. And it's only a total of $800. And what this does is it sets up the empty vessel. So imagine if my glass of water, put it closer, is empty and you're setting it up. And then at some later point, God willing, many, many years, decades from now, parents pass away and there's life insurance money, there's 401k money, there's IRA money, there's the sale of a family home money. That money gets poured into that future funded special needs trust, and then money is then available for that adult child with disabilities, and they're able to keep their government benefits. All of these have a $20,000 minimum before we will disperse any money. And people say, what can you use the money in the trust for? So it's highly individualized. In general, it's to improve overall wellness, independence, quality of life. So most of our clients are using their money for things like cell phones and internet, streaming services, clothes, including specialized items, all kinds of household items, including computers, and medical and dental expenses not covered. This is a huge issue for our clients who come in middle-aged or even older. Sometimes they end up spending $20,000 to $35,000 because their teeth have been so messed up over the years and they weren't able to get proper treatment under Medi-Cal. On a happier note, some people want to be able to take a trip, like a trip to either a day trip to Disneyland or even to Disney World in Florida. And if the person requires assistance for their activities of daily living or for behavioral reasons, the trust can cover the cost of one aid, as well as the one person. But it's really important to note the special needs trust for Johnny cannot pay for 5 members of Johnny's family to go to Disneyland or Disney World. Let's say Johnny is somebody in a wheelchair and needs assistance going to the bathroom and that sort of thing. So the trust would be able to pay for Johnny's all of his expenses at Disneyland, and then one of his parents who is helping him out, or a paid aide, but not the whole family. As people get older, special needs trust money becomes very helpful to supplement in-home supportive services so people can stay at home instead of having to go to nursing homes. Can also pay for a car. And if there's enough money in the trust, special needs trust can also be used to purchase a mobile home or a condo or even a regular family home. Although, as we know, that's very, very expensive in Southern California. We have a partnership with a financial services company called TrueLink, and they're the ones that are managing the investments. They're also the ones that have this great credit card. It's a restricted use prepaid debit Visa card. And that's the primary way clients get money from their trust. Money is loaded onto their card based on their own spending plan. Let's say it's $400 a month, and it's supposed to, and under the spending plan, some of the money is for cell phone and internet, some of it is for food, some of it is for Lyft and Uber, and the rest is for getting a haircut or a mani-pedi and going to the movies. So that client would get the $400 a month put on, loaded, let's say on the first of the month. And then we can, on our end, our staff is able to open and close whole categories of spending. So we only open up the categories that have been pre-approved, like I just mentioned. And so we always close pawn shops. We always close like Wiring Money, Western Union. We always close bars and liquor stores. So on the one hand, the beneficiary has a lot of independence and autonomy. We're not going to tell them which pizza place to go to. They can, where they're going to eat. On the other hand, they're not going to be able to be taken advantage of, um, which could sometimes happen, like in gambling or casinos, which are also a closed category. All right, I think I'll pause here and see if we have some questions.
Um, there's a there's a big question about the problem someone's had with Dentacal. Um, that's that's not really something that we have any control over or know how to fix, unfortunately. Um, the next question after that is, do we charge a fee for our consultations? Yes, we do. We do have a grant that allows us to offer some 5 free every month. So you can certainly ask about that. And what professions does professionally licensed fiduciary refer to? Just investment advisors, CPAs, and lawyers?
So, no, it's a good question. A professionally licensed fiduciary is actually a separate professional designation in the state of California. So, lawyers are automatically allowed to be trustees. So, any lawyer in good standing with the bar can serve as a trustee. The other professions you listed, investment advisor, CPA, they don't automatically get to be trustees. If they needed to be a professional fiduciary, they'd have to do what I did and Ron did, which is taking certain number of classes and passing an exam. And then we have continuing education as professionally licensed fiduciaries. So it is actually a separate professional designation.
Is there an amount that
I'll
works
tell you,
well?
I was going to look up what the abbreviation is. It's CLPF. That's a California licensed professional
Fiduciary.
fiduciary. Thank you. CLPF.
So is there an amount of money that works well to fund a special needs trust?
Well, ideally it's enough for the person's whole life. I mean, it depends on what your child's needs are. I mean, I have an adult child. Can't believe it. He's 30. And I mean, I was told a while ago to try to have at least 1 million, which is tough, right? Or even 1.5 because he's got very high needs. So that's a good discussion to have with a financial advisor because there's formulas and calculators out there to help figure that out. So most of us are not going to have $1 million laying around. So where that comes from is going to be like a life insurance policy, the sale of a family home, pension funds, IRA funds, 401ks, those sorts of things.
Daniela wants to know, will this workshop be offered in Spanish on a different day? That's, I guess, an Alexandra question. So we don't currently have a presentation scheduled in Spanish or in English for this. We've done Spanish presentations in the past. We have Spanish speaking staff. If you look at our website, we have all of our materials fully translated into Spanish. But we haven't always gotten, our list is mostly English speakers. So when we've done Spanish presentations, we don't necessarily get as many people and it's not necessarily worth staff time. But we'll probably do one at some point next year because we don't have a good recording of a Spanish presentation. So make sure you're on our mailing list and you'll get notified when we do that, but we don't have a specific plan right now. Can a special needs trust be used to pay for psych services and other assistance, like executive function training and other counseling? Does the provider need to be licensed as a therapist?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at that again. I got, what was that? Does the census need to pay for psych?
Can a special needs
Yeah,
trust
yeah.
be you? Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's highly individualized what a special needs trust is used for, but we certainly have paid for psychiatric services. We have paid for like life coaches, executive function training. I mean, we're going to be asking some of the same questions, though, that like an insurance company would, like, is this a medical necessity? Is it a proven method? So there's some treatments that are, how experimental is it? Like, is it it's starting to be used, but it hasn't been widely adopted, or is this really considered to be not a very efficient use of funds? So there is some scrutiny about that. But certainly any licensed psychiatrist, psychologist, MFT, MSW, there's no question in paying those bills.
That was the next question, though. Does the provider need to be licensed as a therapist? And I think the answer is legally no. Like legally that is allowed, but that would invite more scrutiny from the trustee.
Right.
How does an 18-year-old applying for SSI apply and not use their parents' income?
Because when you're 18, remember the federal government considers you to be an adult regardless of your level of disability. So when you fill out the form for SSI, you don't include any of the parents' income. But that's why it's important to talk about paying rent, that there's every intention that this person will be paying rent as soon as they have some income.
So Christine is asking about her high functional autistic son who's 40, regional center client, and a veteran, 100% SC for psychiatry disorder. And she wants to know, can he collect SSDI even though he gets a pension for another diagnosis with the VA?
I just don't know. We do have a number of clients who are veterans, and most of the clients who are veterans tend to get better services from the VA than they would through just regular Medi-Cal. So that's a question you might be able to ask at the VA. I just don't know the answer.
That's all the questions we have in chat. Does anybody else want to ask Michelle something while we have her?
Okay, I'll jump back in for the tail end, which is CalAble, which I highly recommend. So CalAble is California's ABLE program. ABLE Act was created under President Obama, and basically it was saying this $2,000 rule with SSI is ridiculous. We need a way for parents to be able to save money for their child with disabilities. We need a way for people with disabilities to be able to keep their government benefits and work more. And so what was created is CalAble. They're based on the 529 savings accounts. And but money in a CalAble account can be used for many more things than a 529 college savings account. So the basics are you can put into a CalAble account on an annual basis whatever the IRS gift tax exemption is. So for 2024, that's $18,000. So that means that's the maximum you can put into somebody who has a disability into their CalAble savings account. And next year, that amount is going up to 19,000. And then throughout a number of years, you can go all the way up to 529, over $500,000. At $100,000, and that's the cap with CalAble in terms of still being able to get SSI. So you can still get your SSI monthly checks as long as you're under 100,000 in a CalAble account. Let's see. So the disabling condition must have been diagnosed before age 26 not 22, which is the case for most government programs. That age limit is increasing to 46 just 2 years from now. You can only have one ABLE account per social security number. For 529 college savings accounts, you can have more than one account, but it's different with the ABLE accounts. The beneficiary is always the account owner, even if they're severely disabled and conserved. The account can be opened by the beneficiary or by various authorized legal representatives, such as a parent of a minor, a legal guardian or a conservator, designated power of attorney, or a rep payee. So the accounts are asset protected, and as long as you use the money for a qualified disabled expense, there's no taxes on putting money in or taking money out. So what is a qualified disability expense? So it's pretty broad. It's all about anything that kind of helps you maintain or improve your health, independence, or quality of life. So it also includes things like food, education, and that could be any kind of educational program, not just post-secondary. Could be vocational training, computer training, graphic art training, radiology training. So very broad. There are some advantages using ABLE account to pay for housing, especially for rent, although that has changed somewhat because the SSI rules changed in October. So the thing about CalAble, you can't just walk into any bank and sign up for it. You can only sign up online. You must have the date of birth, address, and social security number for the person with a disability, and it has to be linked to a bank account. And that's how money gets transferred into the CalAble account. And there also is a variety of investment options similar to what we have. And this is the website. And you only need $25, and it just takes a few minutes to register online. So the experts recommend actually that people with lifelong disabilities have both an ABLE account and a third-party special needs trust. The ABLE account is going to be more money in, money out, especially if you have somebody who is earning a good salary, because you're able to put that earned income into an ABLE account all the way up to $37,000 without impacting SSI. So what ends up happening is the ABLE account becomes more like a checking account, money in, money out, and the special needs trust becomes more like the long-term savings account or nest egg, especially as people get older and in their last 10 or 15 years of life might need quite a bit of money so they can stay at home. And so they might need a lot of extra in-home help. So the overall plan is that there's 3 different accounts: a personal checking or a rep payee account to receive those government monthly checks, or ACH payments. I should update that. And then a CalAble account when that checking account gets over $2,000. And then a third-party special needs trust for the nest egg for the future. So I know that's a lot. There's a lot of incredible, valuable information on our website that Alexandra has put together and updates all the time. Here's my email, mWolf@jlatrust.org, and our phone number. Please follow us on Facebook. And if you want to set up a one-to-one consultation, please do that over email. That's the best way to set up a phone call or Zoom. All righty, I think we're done.
You want to take a couple more questions?
Sure.
So when the trust buys a property, does it put down a down payment and make monthly payments, or does the trust buy the property in cash?
Typically, it's bought outright.
If you've been working in 2024 but got let go, can you put more than 1,800 into CalAble for the 2024 contribution?
I don't think so. They're pretty strict about whatever the IRS gift tax exemption is.
Who sets up CalAble accounts and are there tax benefits?
Well, like I said, it's typically a parent or a legal representative. Would could be the person themselves if they're able to do so.
Do you know if all of a disabled adult child beneficiary's income is excluded for Medi-Cal or only their SSDI income?
Um,
Those are the same benefit, aren't they?
yeah, well, it's a little complicated. So so roughly half of SSDI income can be taxable. So it really depends how much the parents earned and how much they're getting in SSDI. And
I'm not
also, if they had SSI before they get SSDI, then you're able to keep some of the same benefits in terms of Medicare. So, I mean, so for my own son, he is now getting, he was on SSI, he's now getting SSDI, and he's getting Medicare. But because he previously got SSI, Medi-Cal pays for his Medicare premiums.
So that's it, other than can you share the slides in email, which yes, I will send out an email tomorrow with slides and recording. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. A lot of you stuck it out to the end, which is impressive. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. And a happy and healthy 2020-25.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to say bye and go feed my cat. Good night.
Next time in Spanish, please.
Okay, I hear you. I can't do it
Thank-
in Spanish, but we'll see if my colleagues can do it. Okay?
Yeah, but it's very important that this team is very important.
I understand. Please
Yeah,
take a
thank
look
you
at
so much.
our website is all in Spanish. We have our whole website is in Spanish.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. Good
Bye.
night.